What is going on, everybody? Let me get this all lined up for you guys. Whoa. Why does this look so strange? There we go. There we go. I think that'll work. Okay. Give me a second while we go live on some of the other platforms, and we'll jump into what we're talking about today. Let me just make sure audio's all good. It's actually a little too good. Flip it around. I want this close to me, but also this is like extremely loud to you guys. Let's maybe do that, huh? So that way I'm not peeking out all the time. There we go. That's better. Let me know if that sounds a little bit better for you guys. It's over here. Bada bing, bada boom. Perfect. Okay, cool. Now I can see the chat. All right. So, you know what I think I'm going to do? No, we're going to go ahead and do this. Because I was figuring out, I'm trying to figure out if I want to go live on TikTok or on Instagram and Facebook, but I think I'm just going to do Facebook. So we'll get this all set up and ready to go, and we'll get after it, y'all. So yeah, I want to go ahead and leave this open. This is something we're kind of turning into a series somewhat. And the big thing I want to kind of get across to you guys is that, like, you know, the different aspects of the Chigel equation. So we're going to, you know, be breaking down the Chigel equation, my book. If you guys are, you know, curious of what that picture is right above me there, that's my book. You can go look at it on Amazon. I don't have it linked in the description. So bear with me. I am going to go ahead and get it linked in the description very soon. I don't know why I don't have it linked in the description. But that is something I just got to get to work. There's so much stuff I got to get done today. But as we progress, you know, I want to make sure you guys understand the stuff we're talking about, because this can get very in-depth very fast. And so again, thus why we have, you know, Microsoft Word to help us out here. So we'll kind of refresh what we talked about last time when we were talking about the Chigel equation. So as you guys know, this is the Chigel equation right here. Oh, whoops, let me do this. I'm using Microsoft Paint. I really need to use like Photoshop or something. But this is the equation right here. Adaptation equals resonance times constraint divided by energy, right? This is the reason why, you know, maybe you're not adapting the way you want to. Maybe you're not seeing results. Maybe you're not seeing success the way you want to. Again, not only that, but again, as you guys will see, as we continue to do these live streams, this is a universal thing. Like, this happens with every single system you guys can think of, right? Whether you're talking about the human body, an animal, Earth, the universe, like, all of this applies, right? So I want to make sure we break this down for you guys so that you can understand exactly what all we're talking about. So today we're going to be talking about adaptation, which is what we're trying to get to, right? Now, something you guys need to very much keep in mind. How can I increase this real quick? There we go. You are always adapting. You are never not adapting. This is probably the most important thing you guys need to get from this right now. You are always adapting. You are never not adapting. Meaning this equation, trace over my crappily drawn, thing. But this equation applies everywhere at all times. With everything you are looking at right now, this is applying, right? It is at all times applying. This is never not being applied to every single facet you can think of. Every different system, whether it's talking about my phone, my mind, the universe, how stars work, gravity, they all follow this. They all follow this equation, okay? You have to remember this is always happening, okay? And the reason that's important is because most people are doing what I like to call is passively adapting, meaning like you're just letting life go by. You're not even thinking about evolution at that point. You're not thinking about adapting. You're not thinking about how your body is reacting to stimulus. But what you need to understand, guys, is that the body and brain are constantly being sent signals, right? Right now, you guys are watching me on TikTok, or you're watching me on Instagram, or you're watching me on YouTube, or you're watching me on Facebook. By the way, guys, I'm on Facebook. If you're watching this right now, if you want to see the visuals we have pulled up, you have to check it out on the YouTube. But that being said, the signal that's being sent to you right now are photons being sent to your eyes. Your eyes are adapting to a signal being sent to you. When I clap my hand, right, I felt that clap. There's a signal going into my hand. that I'm feeling, right? I'm listening to music right now. A lot of you guys are hearing my voice. Your ears are tuning into this, right? They're your senses are your body's way of measuring what to adapt to, right? Our five senses, when we're talking about touch, taste, feel, sight, like you go on and on. But the main thing you guys got to understand is, what are these systems for? Well, they're there so that your body can learn what they need to adapt to, right? This is what a big part of what people don't understand is that your body is constantly adapting regardless of what you want to do about this. It does not matter. If you do not get to choose, well, I guess you can choose not to adapt, but again, it doesn't even really work because then your body still adapts. Let's say worse goes worse. Let's say you're like, I'm done with this. I'm done with life. And you decide to, for lack of a better term, off yourself, right? Well, if that's the case, that doesn't mean your body is done adapting. What's going to happen? Your body is going to decompose. It's still adapting. Everything, even a rock outside, a non-living thing, is adapting, right? That's why whenever you see, rain and weather go over it, it erodes, right? Which is part of the 3 E's of adaptation, which we'll go over. I actually have it pulled up over here. 3 E's of adaptation. I guess I have it in the middle. I didn't see that. But that's what I'm getting at here, guys, is like you are always constantly adapting. And for the most part, a lot of you guys out there are just passively adapting. You're not really paying attention to it much. Most of you guys are going through your day-to-day lives, not thinking about how you're changing on a day-by-day basis. But you are. You're never not changing. That is what adapting is. That is what living your life is constant adaptation all the time. And the person you are now is the person who has gone through your entire life as you and is adapted to your circumstances. That's who you are right now. Or rather, you chose how you adapted to these circumstances. Because the thing about life, guys, any living organism gets to choose how they adapt. That's what's crazy about any kind of life. We choose how we adapt, which is why we're able to keep ourselves alive, right? Otherwise, we wouldn't be able to keep ourselves alive. That is how adaptation works. When you are hungry, you eat. When you are thirsty, you drink. When you are tired, you sleep. You are adapting to the stimulus, okay? Now, the reason this is so important is because there's only 3 ways this can go. This is the 3 E's of adaptation. You can either erode, you can evolve, or you can become extinct. Now, we'll delve into each one of these kind of on its own because, they each have their own, thing that it's going to supply you. But something I want to start off with, let's go ahead and start off with extinction. Because something you need to understand right now is extinction just means that adaptation from the equation, remember, if you guys are confused about the equation's over here. Adaptation equals resonance times constraint divided by energy, right? So if you go extinct, all this means is that adaptation equals 0. Not great, right? But that doesn't, here's what I really got to get across to you guys, and this is where it gets confusing. Each system bleeds into another system. Okay, so what I mean by that is that, just for example, let's say you passed away today. That's not just going to affect your life. That's going to affect everyone you know and everyone that is in a relationship with you, in an interpersonal relationship with you, right? Maybe it's just like maybe it's just like your dad or your mom or your brothers, or maybe you have kids, right? Or maybe you have animals. Or maybe, I could go on and on, your neighbors, right? And there are multiple people that are impacted by you passing on. So even though your system equals 0, at that time, it feeds into the next system. And the next system is anyone you engage with, anyone that your system interacts with, right? Your neighbor, your brother, your mother, your father, your grandmother, anyone your coworkers, your boss, like anyone you engage with, once you get taken out of that equation, well, guess what? That affects their equation as well. Okay, so you may become extinct, but that doesn't mean you are extinct from the entire equation. I hope that makes sense. The equation almost never fully hits 0, guys. It doesn't. In fact, this is something that I have brought up in the book, or rather, the law that I brought up in the book. If you guys see here, A equals 0, we have the law, and this is where this comes into a universal law, guys. The law of adaptive. I could have typed this out, but I want to do this. Adaptive resonance. Hopefully you guys can read this. Dear Lord. The law of adaptive resonance. You can kind of read it. But this ties into this, into extinction. And so how does it tie into it? How does this become a law just because A equals 0? Well, it's simple, guys. If, and this is very simple math here, guys. If R resonance, C constraint, or E equals 0, then by default, I could have just used a comma, but that's fine. Then A will always equal 0. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it, guys. That's why this is the law of adaptive resonance. If any of these equal 0, then A equals 0, you get extinction. Right? So in order to adapt in any way, shape, and form, in order to exist on this freaking planet, you have to have resonance, you have to have constraint, and you have to have energy of some way, shape, or form. It can be very, very, very small. But if it equals 0, that means you are no longer around. That is the law of adaptive resonance, as we talk about in my book, as you guys can see on screen. But this is why this is such a big deal here, you guys. Like, there's so many people in life who are trying to, and we're going to talk about this maybe on the next episode. But people are trying to get rid of constraint all the time, right? People are constantly like, how can I live my life without any troubles? Well, that's the problem, guys. You always hear of this thing called the problem of evil. I actually wrote a section about this in my book. But there is no, according to this equation, there is no problem of evil. If you guys aren't familiar with the problem of evil, the problem of evil is a philosophical kind of like argument that says, how can there be a benevolent God if there is evil in the world? Well, this answers it right here for you. It is necessary for the equation. You do not get to exist without constraint. That's why. That's why there's evil in the world. That's why there's suffering. That's why bad things happen, is because it has to. Otherwise, A equals 0. Extinction. It is absolutely fucking necessary for you guys to be able to do this. I know my face is covering the A equals 0 on the YouTube screen, but I can't even go over even more. But that's okay. But you guys get the idea of what I'm trying to say here. Like, yeah, it's necessary. It is not a choice. There is no problem of evil. The problem of evil, as soon as we figured this out, as soon as we figured out the law of adaptive resonance, as soon as we figured out that if resonance, constraint, or energy equals 0, then adaptation equals 0. So by default, if you make your life have 0 problems in it, constraint equals 0, which means your adaptation equals 0, which means you become extinct. You guys see what I'm saying here? This is why this is important. There's so many freaking people out there trying to make their lives easy fucking peasy, and that's not how life works, quite literally, according to the equation. This is why I wrote a book on this, guys. Like, I'm a personal trainer, yes, but like the reason I wrote this book is because I've been training people for over 10 years, okay? I've trained hundreds, if not thousands of people. I know I've gotten hundreds of people results, right? The thing you got to understand, and the thing that I see almost more than anything, is that people come up with the excuse that I can't do this right now because my life is too hard. Well, guess what, motherfucker? It's supposed to be. You don't get out of life without constraint. It has to be. It's not even supposed to be. It has to be. You would be dead. You would have nothing to push you. You would have nothing to do. Right? Guys, if you didn't have to worry about making food, if you didn't have to worry about your food, you didn't have to worry about sleep, you didn't have to worry about, taking care of your family's needs, you didn't have to worry about the stuff that we worry about, what would you do with your time? Would there be anything to do with your time? You would do nothing with your time, right? We all, in every aspect, we live off of our problems. We survive. We are alive because of our problems. You don't get to just take that out because you don't feel like dealing with problems. That means you don't feel like being a human being. And that means A equals 0, bro. like I don't know how much more I have to say that, but that's why that's such a big deal. Okay, this is the law of adaptive resonance. There is no such thing as the problem of evil. There isn't. Constraint and evil is necessary. Suffering is necessary. Again, otherwise, A equals 0, you go to extinction. Okay, that's why that's a big deal. Okay, now that being said, even if you go to extinction, it doesn't mean the whole system goes to extinction. In fact, there's a whole, we're going to talk about this is when we go into way deeper aspects of the book, and we're going to hold off on that for now because this is when we start bringing up the divine. This book does get into the divine, guys. Like, we do start talking about God in this book, okay? Because it just goes there. If you follow the equation enough, guys, go type this equation in the ChatGPT, see what it tells you. I'll wait. Like, it'll show some it'll give you explanations that are insane that you've never even fathomed before. That's again why I wrote a book about this. But anyways, we'll move on. These other parts of the equation right now are going to be very, very important because extinction, as far as you're concerned, shouldn't be even in your mind, right? Because that just means you died. I mean, that means you died, or some sort of system wasn't able to go on. It wasn't able to stay around anymore, so it became extinct. A equals 0, right? So that being said, we have other aspects of this. So we also have erosion, right? So let's go over that next, because erosion's a pretty big deal. This is where a lot of you guys are stuck. In fact, if you're feeling stuck, it's a guarantee that you are stuck in erosion as far as the Chigel equation is concerned. Now, here's what you got to understand about the Chigel equation. Again, since it is a universal law, the law of adaptive resonance is a universal law, and since this is a universal equation, or a universal framework rather, you have to be very domain specific with this. So we'll do a live stream on this, but domain specific means you have to use, like, for example, you have to use values or data from each domain, right? Like, there's going to be different, units of energy for, if we're talking about fitness goals, which would be like calories, right? Or mental energy would be another one when we're talking about energy there. Or when we're talking about, the energy it takes for, a rocket to fly through space. It's still, this equation will still work. It's domain specific. You guys get what I'm saying here? So we'll do a whole live stream on domain specific. In fact, that's actually what I made one of the appendices about, was different domains where this equation applies. So we'll go over that as time goes on. But what we need to understand right now is we need to talk about erosion. And so erosion, reason this is a pretty big deal is because, again, you guys are stuck here. It's not extinction. It's just going the wrong way, right? So a better way for me to explain this, you guys have all felt this, okay? You guys have all felt like, for example, anyone who's been on a fitness journey who told themselves 6 months ago that I was going to lose 30 pounds in 6 months. Very reasonable goal, very realistic goal. Yet 6 months pass and they actually gain 10 pounds. That's erosion. That's just an example of erosion. Another example of erosion is going to be exactly what you think about when you think of erosion. A rock outside eroding, right? Or like a carcass decaying, right? It is eroding. It is breaking down. It is going towards extinction rather than evolution. And that's going to be a big thing. This is in fact, guys, I would go as far as to say, is this is the number one thing that kills us at the end of the day? Everybody. Because obviously not all of us, we don't live forever, right? So there is something that kind of gets in the way of evolution, and that is erosion. Eventually, all of our systems get to a point, when we're talking about the human body, it gets to the point where it can't evolve anymore and it starts eroding. It starts going down that path. People start getting osteoporosis, or people start, now again, obviously fitness helps delay this, but it's not like it's not like a magic thing that you're just not going to die one day. Like, it still happens, right? But it helps you go 30 plus more years of being able to move around, which is like invaluable, right? But this is just one circumstance of this. But when we're talking about erosion, like, I really want you guys thinking about like what you learned about in science class when you were a kid. Like, when we talk about rocks eroding, what's happening? Well, they're breaking down, right? The weather's hitting it. Maybe those rocks are around some kind of water source where the water's constantly hitting it, and that water, or maybe that same kind of rock is in the desert and sand just keeps pelting it, and it starts carving out the rock, right? You have less rock at the end of the day. You are not the same amount of rock. You have less of yourself. This is erosion, right? This is the part of you that, like, Again, it feels like you're just churning wheels, right? A few examples, but you used to track your food. Now you just eyeball it, right? And because of that, you're actually gaining weight instead of losing it, right? Or you skip one workout, then two, and then it's normal. You just keep skipping workouts because it's part of your normal routine. Maybe you get a 1 or 2 in throughout the week, but you're not consistent whatsoever. That's erosion. You're not going to get anywhere. You're churning wheels, or you're going backwards, right? Or you used to, this one's big, you used to stretch and do recovery, and you used to do meal preps, you used to be on your shit, and now you think that you somehow graduated fat loss class and that you don't have to do that stuff anymore, and what, surprise, surprise, you're starting to gain weight again. This is erosion, right? This is another way you can adapt. And guys, if you are passively adapting, like I said, most people are just passively adapting. They're not even trying to get to the next level. If you are passively adapting, then you are more likely going to erode. Does that happen every time? No. Sometimes, and the thing about that's beautiful about evolution, because obviously we're going to be talking about evolution next, but evolution's it's self-explanatory, guys. You know what I'm going to say about evolution. It's the one we want to go for, obviously, right? It's the positive adaptation, right? There's evolution, which is the positive. It's something that you are going for. And again, guys, this is domain specific. So when you're applying this, it's about a certain goal. If you guys are confused here, it's like, well, if we're adapting, like, what are we adapting to? It depends on what your goal is. If you are evolving, you are adapting towards the goal you are going towards. If you are eroding, you are adapting away from the goal you're going towards. And if you are extinct, then you have eroded so much that you can't come back. That's how all this works, right? So the big thing here is we need to try and make sure, one, we have to have a goal. Right? I'm so big on this. I talk to my clients about this all the time, right? Or even when we're talking about, like, you know, when we're applying this to science and stuff, we have to have a goal we're trying to shoot for, or you can use this in hindsight as well. You can use this to help figure out what went wrong. In fact, this equation works really well for hindsight, figuring out what the problem is, why we didn't do what we were going to do. You know, if I've been trying to lose 30 pounds for 6 months and I gained 10 pounds instead, you can apply this equation and you can figure out what's wrong. Is my energy off? Is my resonance off? Is my constraint off? It's one of those three. One of those three is not doing the things it needs to. Right? Because the thing about these three is it doesn't necessarily matter if you have a high R, a low R, or a middle, you know, kind of a in-between R. Same thing for constraint and the same thing for energy. It doesn't matter where those levels are for you to evolve. It matters how in sync they are. That's the killer. Okay? What do I mean by that? You can't have, for example, if you have high R, high C, and high E, it doesn't mean that you burn out. It means you get a really high adaptation. It means you evolve to the most degree, right? It's just really hard to freaking do that, right? Now, these are the major success stories. And guys, I actually wrote a chapter in my book about the pyramids about this. The pyramids are a prime example of this. They had high resonance. Everyone, when the pyramids were being made, because you have all these people talking about, well, the pyramids were made by, you know, aliens and stuff like that. No, the Chigel equation, and I write a whole chapter about this in the book. The Chigel equation shows that as long as they had high resonance, high constraint, high energy, that was bound to happen. They were bound, not necessarily to make a pyramid, but they were bound to make something that was going to last a long time, that was going to have a lot of impact, that was going to be insane and jaw-dropping. And that's what the pyramids were, right? Let's go over it real quick. They had high resonance. Guys, think about how the pyramids were made. It wasn't just like a pharaoh telling people what to do. Of course, that was a part of it, but also the people who were working for the pharaoh believed in what was going on. They had the whole tribe, the whole people who were working on the damn thing resonated with this. The slaves who were working on it also believed in this stuff. It wasn't just like the pharaoh. They also thought that he was a god. Right? That was the whole point of the pyramids being made, was that they were making pretty much a death house, for lack of a better term, or a statue to help glorify their god, which was the pharaoh. Right? That was the whole point of making those things. And everybody, we're talking everyone. We had the soldiers, you had the pharaohs, you had the slaves. Everyone was all about making this thing. Everyone was about it. It wasn't just like the slaves were like just doing it to do it because they were being whipped, because that also obviously was a part of it, but they also were doing it because they believed in this themselves, right? The resonance was beyond belief. It was extremely freaking high. Don't get me started on constraints, guys. You guys know they went through constraints. We could talk about like the tools they used, them being in the area they were in, moving those tens of thousands of pounds of block. The constraints were extremely high, but they also had tons of energy. They had manpower, right? They had a whole nation working on one thing. And again, that's where all the energy came from. They had manpower. So if you have a lot of manpower, you have a lot of constraints that are, that you're applying this manpower towards, and the resonance is high, everyone is directed towards this goal, and everyone is synchronized towards this goal, then of course, by default, you're going to have something crazy. And that's what the pyramids were. And I go into way more in depth of this in the book. Like, we talk about this to an even more extreme degree to talk about like why, like how perfect the thing was and stuff like that. But that's exactly my point, guys. It was bound to happen. There was too much going into the equation for it not to happen. That's why the pyramids are here. It wasn't because of some aliens. It wasn't. It was bound to happen based off the circumstances, according to the Chigel equation. Again, we have a whole chapter about this in the book, and we'll probably do a live stream a little bit more in detail of it. But again, just to go over evolution real quick, just to kind of tie this all back into place, is evolution is what happens when everything is in sync. Right? Again, it doesn't matter if you have low R, low C, low E. All of those can be low, but they have to be in sync. It's all about that synchronicity. This is why the first part of my book, we break my book into two parts, where we talk about synchronicity at the first part, which is more about mindset. And then the later half is the universal law, where we talk about how this works in different domains of science, right? But you got to understand that the biggest way we get to evolution, one is, again, and this is, again, if we're going towards something, not like looking backwards. Like I said, if we're looking at hindsight, we already have all the variables we need as long as we have the data. But the big thing here is if we want to go towards something, if we want to succeed at anything, we need to make sure that our resonance, our constraint, and our energy are in sync. If you have high energy, low, medium resonance, and then really low constraint, what's going to end up happening is you're going to get lazy and you're not going to do anything. Why? Your constraint's low. What's your reason? What's your reason to do anything different? If your constraint's low, right? Again, let's give you guys a goal here, right? Let's say the goal is to drop 20 pounds, right? If the constraint's low, that means that you don't feel that the 20 pounds is really worth losing, because you would rate it at a higher constraint. You see what I'm saying here? And because of that, the constraint is low, and so you don't feel like you really even have to lose the 20 pounds, right? And by default, that's also probably what's making your resonance be so low too, right? Because remember, these two multiply. They are multipliers of each other. Resonance and constraint directly affect each other, right? So if you don't resonate with your constraints, there's a problem, right? If you don't resonate with the fact that you want to lose 20 pounds, and you don't feel like you need to lose 20 pounds, even though maybe you have some friends telling you that you need to lose 20 pounds for the sake of livelihood, right? It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter, because you're the only one in control of your body, right? And if you don't resonate with that, you're not going to do it. You're just not going to do it. It's a huge part of the equation. You're going to end up going towards erosion. This is why, you guys will go looking through TikTok. You'll see a motivational TikTok, and then you go, oh, I want to go to the gym right now. You have high resonance. It helps elevate you. And then a few hours pass, when it's time to go to the gym, you go, oh, man, I'm tired now, though. I don't want to go to the gym. Low resonance, right? You were just riding a high. You didn't mean it. Or maybe you meant it, but maybe your energy's low now, right? Again, now maybe you have high R, you have medium C, but now, I don't have any more energy. You have low E. It's out of sync, guys. This is what I mean. This is where I see so many people out there trying to force themselves into a fitness journey to force results. And the reason they don't get results is because these are out of sync. Basically, what ends up happening when you force results, you're trying to increase your constraints, but you only have so much energy, especially if you're in a calorie deficit, because that's what a calorie deficit is, guys. Calories are a unit of energy. Okay. If you're in a calorie deficit, you're in an energy deficit. Okay. If this is going up and this is constantly going down, you've got a fucked up situation. Okay. And that's what people do though. People get frustrated and they see that they haven't lost any weight the past, 2 to 3 months. And even though they feel like they've been trying. And so they double down, they go harder and they stall out. Because again, it doesn't matter. If you have low energy, you can't make something happen without any energy, guys. It does not work that way. You will crash out. You will burn out. You will eventually, stop this really low calorie diet so you can binge out on some cupcakes. That's exactly what happens every fucking time. Again, guys, I've been doing this for 10 years. I'm not stupid. Listen, you may be able to fool your friends. I've been doing this for too long. I know how to call out bullshit. I digress. I was about to go on a whole extra tangent. We've already been going on for like 30 minutes. The end of the day, the main things you guys need to understand about adaptation is 2 things. One is that you are always adapting. You do not get to choose this. You are always adapting by default. You are always constantly changing, little by little even. So you need to make sure you are not passively adapting. Make sure you are trying to go towards something. Even if you do, end up eroding. Is it really erosion if you fail and then learn through that failure to evolve? Is it really erosion, or are you just viewing it that way? This is how people view failure, by the way. Failure, and by all intents and purposes, if you end up getting to your goal at the end of the day later than you planned on, you still evolved, right? There's so many different ways you can twist and turn this around, but this is what I wanted to get across to you guys. These are the 3 ways you can go. Again, you are always adapting, 1, but 2, there's only 3 answers. And it's these 3 answers. You can either erode, you can evolve, or you can become extinct. You get to choose which one of those happens. That's the beautiful part about this, to a degree. Obviously, again, you do not get to live forever. Eventually, you will erode down and you will become extinct. Right? There's nothing you can do about that. But again, your system will go into other systems, and maybe that helps. Maybe, for example, someone watches my one of my TikToks where I help them learn how much protein they eat. They start getting a high protein diet. And let's say this is after I pass away, right? Let's say 100 years down the road, some future kid sees my TikToks or just looking at old TikToks from way back in the past. It teaches them how to actually burn body fat. And that kid ends up burning like 50 to 100 pounds. And he really needed to hear that. And I'm already gone, right? That means my system's still here. My resonance is still here. And people felt that resonance, which caused someone else to evolve, which means this is never truly zero. Never truly zero. But anyways, so much to digest. I know you guys, I'm doing these live streams where they are being posted on YouTube because I know this is a lot of information to go over. So I want to make sure if you guys have any questions, you have places to ask me. So if you have questions, ask them on the YouTube so I can save them, because obviously when we go live, it won't just keep them all. But this is the stuff we're going to be covering again for the next forever, honestly, until maybe I write another book. But I really enjoy going over, the work I've been putting in the past few months on this book. Really explaining it in a way, just explaining it out loud, because a lot of it was either written down or in my head or, just conversing, with other people. And so being able to put it into a content form where I can explain it to you guys and you guys can actually absorb this information, it's fun for me, and again, I hope this information gets to someone and that they really need to hear this. They need this information, and that they can actually learn how to adapt the right way, learn how to, again, if you're struggling, like spinning your wheels, and this doesn't, again, it's a universal law, guys. This isn't just fitness. I apply it to fitness because I'm a personal trainer and a lot of you guys are following me because I'm, a fitness guy. But this applies everywhere. This applies to money. This applies to like freaking everything you want to. This applies to you getting better at like a sport. This applies to you getting better at your job. This applies to anything you're trying to be, fishing, anything you're trying to get better at. This applies to. I even sent a version of this to my brother, who's a doctor of physical therapy, to use in physical therapy. Like, you can use it in any field. You can use it in any field. And again, we will do a live stream going over the different domains and different examples and stuff like that. But again, like I said, if you guys have any questions on this stuff, which I'm sure over time, more and more people are going to be kind of like, what the hell is this all about? Let me know. But as far as what I think we'll do next time is I said we were going to go over constraint on the next one. I think we're going to go over resonance, because it's probably the hardest one to quite understand. I'll need to spend some time on it. After all, the law of adaptive resonance is the universal law. So I want to make sure you guys can kind of comprehend what that's going on with. But that's all I got for you guys today. I'll see you guys on the next one. We'll be doing another one of these on Friday night. So see you guys there. Peace out. Have a wonderful day. I thought I was going to